Hey people, I'm a guy who draws sometimes. I've been drawing on and off for a long time, but I haven't been taking it too seriously. Recently, I got into a bit of an art burst, and of the 24 works I posted to Pixiv, only 6 of them weren't made in the last half a year. So yeah, I've been taking art just a little bit more seriously. By the way, I have 99 followers on Pixiv. Let's get it to a nice even 100. Like most people who draw, I want to get better at art. I'm not planning on taking any formal classes, so the most I've got is online tutorials. Now the problem is that there's so many things to improve at, and so many resources to learn from, so I try to find some sort of guided path to help me efficiently organize and tackle improving in easy steps. I ended up stumbling across Radio Runner's solo art curriculum online, link in description, and I like the topics in it, and more importantly, the order of topics in it. Now I'm not exactly starting my art journey from complete zero, and I do have some fundamental training from drawbox.com, so I decided to skip over the first term and move on to the second, which is primarily concerned with head and torso anatomy. Torso anatomy can be a different video, and as you've probably guessed from the title of this video, I'm looking at head anatomy for now. My plan to improve at head anatomy is not to draw a bunch of anime heads, even though that is primarily what I draw. Now I have plenty of practice with that already, and I'll keep getting plenty of practice with that as I keep drawing more and more characters, just normally. Instead, my plan is to really dive deep into the core of the head, the skull. So I plan to start drawing a simplified version of a realistic skull, and then apply that knowledge to drawing cute anime girls. Because for as cool as doing anatomy studies is, I don't want to forget my real end goal of drawing really cute anime girls doing really cute things. Okay, time to be real here. I watched Pikat's video on how she improved her head drawings by learning how to draw skulls, and I'm really just trying to copy her and see how doing what she did will improve my own art. To mark my progress, here's the most recent picture I drew before starting this challenge, and I can't show the full picture here on YouTube. So here's the second most recent picture I drew before starting this challenge. Again, I'm not a noob artist, and I put myself around intermediate level. Now, this picture isn't awful or anything, at least from the torso up, but I didn't really know exactly how to draw the head. For example, I didn't really know where exactly to place the eyes, how to space them apart, where to place the nose or mouth, how to shape the face. Like, why does her cheek extend out like that and the head appear to curve inwards at the eye level? These are just things I drew because I noticed them on other people's artwork, but I didn't exactly know why other artists drew the face like that. Now, this skull drawing exercise is my way to address that. Learning how a real skull looks like will allow me to really understand why some artists draw heads a certain way. So now that we know where I'm at and why I want to do this, let's start drawing some skulls. And by skulls, I mean an Asaro head. You thought I was just gonna raw dog a realistic skull? Nah, I don't do realism yet. And my goal for this practice is simply to get a rough overview of a simplified head shape. I don't want to have to worry about how smooth curves interact with light and stuff. Just give me a low poly 3D model to practice easy to see shading. I haven't been watching Bob Ross, so I can't paint. I can only do cell shading. So here's my first attempt at drawing a skull. I used my knowledge of the Loomis head method and tried to apply that here. I looked at a reference to draw this, but I didn't measure out proportions on the actual skull before drawing. So this drawing's proportions are just kind of what I thought a skull was supposed to look like. As it turns out, there were some things I just flat out didn't know, and that blindly applying a Loomis head construction isn't going to tell you. Here, I'll overlay the skull on top of the reference and draw where the skulls didn't match in red, and you'll see how these two don't exactly line up, especially in the cheekbones area. I drew them way too tall. The cheekbones actually end at the bottom line of that nose hole thing. I drew them a bit lower than that. Looking back on my earlier picture, you'll see that I also drew the cheek bulge really far below the nose. Drawing a little lump in this general area isn't necessarily wrong, because there's fat and muscles in this area that will cause the face to extend away from the jaw. But my assumption was that the cheekbone actually extended all the way down to around where the teeth line was. Wrong. The cheekbone is a lot further up than I initially thought, which is why this character's head looks so long in this drawing. My next few attempts ended up looking even worse, as I drew them without a reference, but eventually I got the hang of it and drew this beautiful man using this skull as a base. I started feeling good now, but I also had to remember the end goal, which was to stylize this realistic head shape into something a bit more anime-like. Like, that's the whole point of this exercise, to learn realism so I can draw stylized stuff better. A lot of online artists recommend learning realism first, then applying stylization to it. The problem is that nobody really tells you how to stylize if you already know the realistic part. So I had to figure that out by myself. This next part is going to be how I take this realistically proportioned head and stylize it into something a bit more anime-like. Essentially, we're moving from what the theory of drawing heads is and moving on to the practical application. You can vertically divide a realistic head into 3 equally sized pieces. The top third starts at the top of the head, contains the forehead, and ends at the brow line. The middle third starts at the brow line, contains the eyes and nose, and ends at the bottom of the nose and cheekbones. The bottom third is essentially the mouth area, which include the lips, cheeks, jaw, and chin. So, how does this apply to anime? The proportions have to be different somehow, because, you know, the eyes on anime characters are massive! So how do you fit them onto a head? As it turns out, the same skeletal proportions can be applied to anime characters. Let's take a look at this picture by Dasu. Let's divide the head using our landmarks. Separate the head at the brows, separate at the bottom of the nose, and oh, the skull is split into thirds, same as the realistic skull. But that can't be right. This anime girl is way different from a real-life human being. How can they have the same proportions? Well, it's only half true. Your eyes aren't deceiving you. Those anime eyes are way bigger than a real person's. So how does it fit within this framework? There are multiple ways to get bigger anime eyes while keeping these proportions in mind. One way to get bigger eyes vertically is to carve out space for the eye sockets from the bottom of the brow ridge and the top of the cheekbones. Another way is to increase the width of the head so that the head keeps the same height proportions, but now there's more space horizontally. This actually makes characters look cuter, because a head with a smaller height to width ratio more closely resembles the skull on a child or a cat. Which, fun fact, anime style proportions are actually modeled after cats because of how cute they are. One other thing specific to anime heads is a pointy chin. Realistic heads have a very flat jaw, and the chin tends to be at least kind of boxy. In an anime style, many artists actually don't draw the chin at all. They just make the jaw really pointy. When you take this to its logical extreme, you end up with Gaku and Handsome characters, who can literally stab each other with their chins. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule. You can still fudge the proportions depending on your style goals. When it comes to anime characters, you can reduce the height of the jaw to bring the mouth closer to the nose. This tends to look cuter, and is the actual reason why chibi characters look so cute. It's not just that chibi characters have big eyes, it's because they also have really tiny jaws. Anyways, here's my attempt at applying stylization to his skull, and then drawing an actual face on top of that. Moving on. I then drew the skull in a few different angles, and even tried drawing a face on top of some of them. The first face looks really weird, but I got better about it later. My realistic facial features could use some work, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm really fond of this dapper guy in a top hat, planning on world domination later. Overall, I'd say drawing skulls, combined with drawing facial features on top of it, cemented my understanding of the underlying anatomy of a face. I mean, I still haven't really looked at the muscles of the face yet, but I think I can hold off on those studies until I enter my Attack on Titan phase. I'm a fan of doing one-to-one drawings, and by that, I mean I'll spend one drawing session doing a study, and then the next drawing session being a funner drawing where I apply what I learned in that study. So now that I have a skull study on my belt, let's try to apply all this knowledge to an actual drawing. And it looks like crap. All that effort and this is the result? I was honestly pretty disappointed when I was finishing up this drawing. At first glance, it looks alright, maybe some of you even think it looks good. But the more you look at the picture, the more things look wrong. Now funny enough, I don't think that the head looks all that bad, it's just everything else that's attached to it. Her neck is way too long and connects to the head in what's probably an incorrect position. Her clothes and hair look way too stiff, like somebody sprayed way too much hairspray on them. I'm also not a big fan of the shading. I think I was trying to go for something a little bit more realistic than what I usually do, but it came off looking like it was stuck in an uncanny valley, in between cartoony and realistic. So what went wrong here? Well, for this piece, I specifically wanted to apply my newfound head knowledge, and wanted to make the head shape look as good as possible. However, I ended up spending too much effort on the head and face and kind of neglected everything else. Let this be a lesson to not let a hyperfixation get in the way of your other responsibilities. Despite me dunking on this piece for the last minute, I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. I had just one goal with this drawing, to apply and solidify my skull study, and I think I did accomplish that goal with this drawing. Ah fuck, let's not look at this one. Okay, so this is a fan art of Valve's new MOBA game, Deadlock. I actually like this one, but I wasn't focusing on correct anatomy, this was purely to practice my rendering. By the way, Deadlock's a fun game. I recommend giving it a shot, even if you hate other MOBAs, like League of Legends and Dota 2. This isn't supposed to be a refined drawing, you can move on to the next picture. This is a fan art of Stranova, which is a new tactical shooter just like Counter-Strike and Valorant, but the main gimmick is that most characters are anime girls. I actually like this one, but I wasn't focusing on correct anatomy. I just wanted to casually draw something for this game for fun. By the way, Stranova's a fun game. I recommend giving it a shot even if you hate Counter-Strike and Valorant. Oh, I like this one. Wait, I can time-lapse this. Pretend you didn't see that. I've been experimenting a lot with my art up to this point, but now it's time to finally apply everything I've learned into one finished drawing. I start this drawing off with a reference study. I grabbed a reference off of Pinterest with a bunch of heads that I wanted to try to emulate the style of and started tracing over it. Now obviously, I'm not going to trace for my finished drawing. I'm just trying to learn some of these techniques so I can subconsciously apply them later. I think it's a good idea to have references of the stuff that you want to emulate while you're drawing. For the sketch, I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted the drawing to actually look like. All I wanted to do was draw heads. It's probably a good idea to head into a drawing with some sort of intention for what you want the drawing to look like, but for this one I just sort of winged it. The result of me winging this drawing is that my first pass at this resulted in a sketch that looked kind of wrong. For a second there, it looked like I was about to repeat the same mistakes as my first attempt at drawing after my skull study. I wasn't too happy with how the sketch was going by this point, and I didn't really know exactly how to fix it. So I took a break from it so I could return to it later with some fresh eyes. I realized that the pose kind of lacked energy, so I changed it up so that she would be leaning forward instead of just kind of leaning back, I guess. This new pose in the angle that we're viewing her from also meant that we wouldn't be able to view her neck as much, so I basically moved her entire body so we wouldn't have to see her neck. Here I do a rough coloring pass, so I'll be able to see what it looks like when it has colors. I thought it looked a little bit weird, so I refined the sketch a little bit more before moving into the line art. Her face in particular looks pretty awkward to me, so I try to fix it up by changing her expression. I'd say that this is an improvement, but there's also one other thing with her eyes that needs to be addressed. I didn't realize this was a problem at this time, but later on you'll see what I mean. Moving into the line art, I created a new vector layer and started making my line art on that. Because you can edit line thickness very easily on a vector layer, I make my lines using a pen with no pressure sensitivity on line weight, because I can just change it later as needed. I add in some basic ambient occlusion using line art. Then I later go in and use the line adjustment tool to increase and decrease line weight. Because that's not the focus of this video, I won't go into the specifics of how exactly I do that. For this drawing, I wanted to try out a simplified shading style without complex cast shadows. I didn't want to think too hard about the hair highlights, so I grabbed the lasso tool. I selected a kind of squiggly H shape for each clump of hair. In my opinion, it looks okay and it gets the job done. I don't exactly know the art theory on why this looks okay, but I'm rolling with it. One thing I wanted to experiment with in this drawing was manga screen tones. They make the area they're applied to look a little bit darker, so I added them to areas where light would have a pretty hard time reaching. I'll start adding gradients to my flat colors now, to reflect the ambient and reflected light in this drawing. I also start adding in these shading streaks to the hair and clothes. I end up ditching most of them on the clothes, but I keep the ones on the hair. I can't tell you why exactly I do this, because I don't really know either, I just think it looks cool. If I had to guess, I'd say it's because it adds detail to otherwise undetailed parts of the drawing. I have a kind of hard time rendering in my eyes, because while I want to draw really complex eyes, they might look out of place with my relatively simple art style. Well, that and I'm just lazy and don't want to spend too much time on one thing. So I add in some shading, a few glossy bits here and there, and I call that a day. Here's how studying the head planes really started to help me. I add in highlights on the eyelids because those planes face up towards the light source. This makes the eye area a little brighter and makes it more of a focal point for the picture. This naturally draws the viewer's eyes towards the character's eyes, which is what I want. I'm going with a pretty simple background for this picture. Don't need anything fancy. I add in screen tones on the hair around the face area. This gives the hair texture for an otherwise clean art style, and it further brings viewer attention towards the center of the face. And I just think it looks neat. Throw in some post-processing and the picture's done. Not bad, right? Now let's just set it as my profile icon and... Why does it look weird? She looks like a weird, ugly gremlin. I know she's supposed to be a demon girl and all that, but she's also supposed to be cute, not like this. As it turns out, I drew her left eye a little bit too big. This is what it's supposed to look like. It happened again. I finished the drawing and it looks weird. I should have listened to my gut feeling when I saw from the sketch that the face still looked a little wonky even after I changed the mouth expression. I already posted this picture to social media, and the picture was already as good as finished. I should just cut my losses and apply this knowledge to the next drawing just like I did before. In my opinion, it's a bad idea to fix your mistakes in pursuit of perfection. It's almost always better to just move on to a new picture. Plus, if I try to fix it now after I've already done all the rendering, it would be a pain. Anyways, I fixed the picture. Here's the result. Oh, much better. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Besides some basic skull anatomy, since I'm probably not the best person to explain this stuff to you, the main thing I got out of this is that it's important to do your own gosh darn studies. You can buy and read as many art books as you can afford, and always make some time to watch a new art YouTube tutorial on your crusty phone whenever you take a dump. But the best way to learn how to draw is to sit down and draw. If you want to learn anatomy, the best way to do that is to do your own anatomy studies. If you force yourself to think about the study, and to study the study, so to speak, you'll develop and internalize your own way of thinking about drawing new subjects. The knowledge you gain will be unique to you, and you can use that to develop your art style in unique ways. As an example, after doing that head study, I now split the head from top to bottom into thirds, the details of which I explained earlier in this video. However, some people like to split the head in half, with the halfway point being the center line of the eyes. This is also a perfectly valid way to view the head. In fact, I used to see the head that way too, but now I like this thirds method more. It gives me a little bit more control, in my opinion. Now, since drawing is the practice of applying what you see, how you internalize these drawing techniques will affect how you draw. And you don't know what the best way of drawing, for you, is like until you actually do it yourself. So grab some references and a pen and get to work. Well, I guess I'm an art YouTuber now.